So 88% of abortions are in the first 12 weeks. 88.
Yeah.
88% of abortions. Less than 1.3% of abortions take place near the 8th or 9th month.
How many abortions
Is that Guttmacher?
Well, how many is that?
I don't know the actual numbers.
13,
this is the percentages.
13,000.
Okay, but we're talking about less than 1.3%.
Hold on, 13,000. That's the number of people who die from gun violence in the U.S. each year that aren't suicides.
Gentlemen,
so that's
I am
13,
not here
000.
to justify abortion when it happens as in it's
But
a good
you're
thing.
no,
I don't celebrate
brother,
it.
You're saying it doesn't happen.
No,
You're saying
I
it doesn't
never
happen.
said
It
doesn't
happens
happen.
13,000 times.
I said it's extremely. There is 338 million Americans. I'm sorry. The numbers are going to be a little daunting. Yes, the numbers will be high.
Well,
I'm not here to celebrate that.
I don't understand your argument then.
My argument is that there's a lot of human beings.
13,000 people die from guns, we have a problem, right?
If 13,000 people die from guns, we have a problem. Yes, of course.
If 13,000 late-term abortions happen, is that a problem?
These are completely different things.
Well, how so?
Okay, so if someone dies by a gun, are they being shot? Were they killed? Did they kill themselves? Was it a suicide? Was it a gang violence thing? Who knows?
That's a good question.
Can I clarify? I don't want to argue. I just want to clarify.
I need to answer this.
Well,
In the case of
can I address what you just said?
yes, but in the case of late-term abortions, more often than not, when statistics say, and when they are polled, they say the reason that they are giving it is because it's a medical complication that could result in the death of the mother or the child.
Right. So let's. Can we make the argument then that the use of guns on people are allowed?
The use of guns of people are
To end their lives is allowed.
So that's murder. You're describing murder.
So if Colorado, for instance, passes a law saying there is no medical requirement for an abortion, is it wrong to kill the baby?
You're trying to compare murdering someone with a gun to a woman having to make a medical decision that could basically preserve her life.
No. I said not a medical reason. That's what I'm saying.
Should she have the ability to have an abortion for any reason? Yes.
At 9 months.
At 9 months, I would say at 9 months, because it only happens according to the stats based on complete medical necessity. She has a right to do it.
No.
She should have a right.
Hold on. Colorado legalized abortion up to 9 months with no medical reason required. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that decision, yes.
So the baby could survive on its own, and the mother is legally now allowed to just end its life.
She has the right if she wanted to. You're saying so in Colorado, and
it's not a trick question.
I know, but I'm asking you because you're the one who brought this up. I don't know what Colorado's specific law says. So if you were saying that in Colorado, women have the ability at 9 months to have an abortion for any reason. They could just decide that
elective, yeah.
Okay, I think they should have the right to do that, but the stats show that they're not doing that. But they should have a legal right to do that. Yes, it's their body, it's their choice, of course.
So this is what I disagree on. I think if the baby needs to be removed from the woman, there's no reason to kill it. You know what I mean? Like you could just C-section and then put it for adoption.
But I'm telling you that doesn't happen.
But it does. But hold on.
Like you might be able to bring up anecdotes, but the stats don't say that.
But hold on. Like, why allow it to happen? I just don't understand. Are you arguing? Hold on. Are you arguing you oppose it? And you think it's morally wrong, but you think it should be legal?
I think that women should have the right to decide what they do and have bodily autonomy over their own bodies.
We're not talking about her body. We're talking about...
It is her body. Of course it is. At 9 months, even if it's still inside her, it's still her body. Even if it's a viable baby, it's still her body.
We're talking about the removal of the baby, yes?
The forceful removal of the baby, or...
Forceful.
So she chooses to have that. She should have the right.
The woman says the baby must be removed from my body. Why kill the baby if they're removing it?
I don't think they should do that. I would. If they ask me, Lance, should I do this? I would say no. But she should have a right. Yes, of course. It's her body still. That doesn't stop.
So, like, the woman is pregnant. The baby is viable and capable of surviving on its own.
Sure.
And she says before it breaches oxygen, kill it. Do you think that should be allowed?
This is, again, the baby guillotines. This is why I brought that up. But what a weird scenario. This doesn't happen. This is not the real world.
But it does. And if the argument is that it doesn't happen enough for you to care, that's fine. You're allowed to believe that.
Sure.
What I don't understand is it seems like your position is a rather shocked position where you recognize there is something inherently wrong with taking the life of a baby that could survive on its own, but you're also taking the tribal position of women should be allowed to do it anyway.
No. If you were to ask me, Tim, hey, Lance, do you think it's a good idea if this woman who's 9 months pregnant, suddenly she got bored with the pregnancy, she doesn't want to have it anymore, but the baby's viable? Do you think that's a good thing to do? I would be like, no, of course not.
Then why should it be allowed?
Because it's still her right. It's still her body.
But
bodily autonomy doesn't stop at my morality. Tim, it's not my choice. Right? It's not my, yes, but that's not my choice.
Why kill it? Why kill it?
That's her choice, not mine.
Why kill the baby?
Ask her. Ask her.
Okay. So my point is simply this. You don't need to be shocked by it. You are allowed to have that moral position. I think most people in America would prescribe that to be, would ascribe evil to that.
Sure. But that's
the idea.
You can ascribe evil to whatever you want. That's up to you. That's your choice.
The idea that you would say
doesn't mean that she should
the woman
legally be
wants
restricted.
the baby removed, and then in the process, instead of letting the baby live, remove it but kill it, right? There's no reason to do that. You can give the baby up for adoption. You can drop the baby off on the doorstep of a post office.
I agree with you. I'm not disputing
So why
that.
legalize, even if it's one? Why legalize? You see, this is the craziest thing.
Because her autonomy should not be cut off based on your morality. Because you don't think that idea is good. You don't like it.
But the baby's been removed from her body.
Well, that's if it was removed from her body and it was still viable. Right? And that's where the baby guillotines come in, because I don't think this happens. I don't think women on the 9th month get abortions with viable living children and then be like, I don't want it, kill it. I don't think that happens.
You don't have to think it happens, but statistically it does, because your entire argument is this only happens for reasons of the health of the mother or the health of the unborn child.
I said
so you believe it only
the
happens because there's
statistics show that at the 9th month, if a woman is going to have an abortion, it's typically because it's a medical complication that could either endanger her or the child's life.
And what I am saying is there are doctors who will justify that by saying the medical complication is she is depressed. That is literally one of the reasons given in surveys of women. And another reason that is given is that I didn't know if the man who I was going to be with.
Okay, but Seamus, I got to stop you because this is a nebulous argument that doesn't get anywhere, and I can respect the point that if you go to if you try and look this up, you're going to find left-wing sources and right-wing sources that will contradict each other. So my question is strictly on the legality of terminating the life of a child. I can sit here and pull up, oh, hey, here's one. Women abort Down syndrome babies late term rather frequently. I think that's wrong. I don't think that someone's life is forfeit because they have Down syndrome. But your argument is that they do.
No, it's not. That's a strong.
No. Your argument is that women have a right to terminate a baby for any reason at any point.
Yes, they should have the bodily autonomy to make that decision.
So what I'm saying is, in the circumstance of Down syndrome, I think it is wrong to terminate a baby's life at 9 months simply for having Down syndrome. But you would agree she is legally allowed to do so.
I think she should be legally allowed to do so. Whether or not I think that's a good idea is irrelevant.
Well, then there's the clarification. I think it should be illegal.
Okay.
I think
so there are limits to how much bodily autonomy women should have.
So yes, right.
So that's your stance.
The pro-choice argument, because you're pro-abortion, right?
Sure.
Pro-choice traditionally in this country put limits at around like 15 to 16 weeks, meaning if the baby is dependent upon the body of the mother, then it is the body of the mother and she has final say. If the baby is viable, it can be removed in a process that ends the pregnancy but doesn't end the life of the baby. That's kind of like the compromise where the baby gets to live and the woman no longer has to be pregnant. There seems to be this amoral argument where, but just kill the baby anyway, which doesn't make any logical sense. That's the pro-abortion side. So if you go back to the 90s, if you go back to safe, legal, rare, et cetera, if you even look at Tulsi Gabbard in 2020, that's where I'm at. Conservatives are pro-life outright. Seamus would argue abortion in any capacity should be banned entirely. I'm in the traditional Democrat position. But you see, there is a tribal, amoral, illogical position of just let them kill the baby regardless. I don't see any logic there. I don't see how that makes sense morally or ethically or just mathematically.
Right. So you said I'm pro-abortion. What I'm against is forced birth. And I don't think the state should be forcing women to give birth against their will, which is what your position and your position is as well. So I'm against that. I think that's creepy big government shit. I don't think they should be forcing them and turning them into these viable wombs against their will.
I completely agree. I'm against forced birth, just like you.
Cool.
Except my difference is that if the baby's at 8 months and can survive, they can take the baby out as if they would have an abortion, but not kill it in the process.
If it's a viable at 8 months, is it viable?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is viable at 8 months, dude. There have been babies after 20 weeks.
Bro, your whole position is that women have a right to kill the baby even if they end the pregnancy, and there's no logic there.
The logic is that I don't think you agree with forced birth at a point.
How?
How at 8 months? At 8 months, Tim Pool thinks forced birth is fucking cool and poggy.
Stop making up stupid bullshit.
But
dude.
Hold on. That's what this is.
Bro.
100% forced birth.
Nonsense statement. Because I already said I agree with you.
A
woman should be able to end her pregnancy whenever she wants. A woman could end her pregnancy whenever she wants. Say it. Tim Pool said a woman can end her pregnancy whenever she wants.
Yeah, but aborting is giving birth are both ending a pregnancy.
Make up something fake. Tim Pool agrees with forced birth is a false statement. You're lying. I have already said I believe that women have a right to terminate their pregnancy up to a certain amount of time.
At 8 months is where you draw the line.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you just said that. If the baby is viable, that she shouldn't have the right to be able to terminate it.
To kill the baby.
Yes.
I said she can end the pregnancy whenever she wants.
And ending the pregnancy can be giving birth or aborting the baby.
Or a C-section that keeps the baby alive.
She has to be forced to give birth against her will in a C-section, but the baby is viable and they give it off.
So how do they remove the baby?
So hold on, either way,
months?
the baby comes out of her. You're saying that
so you literally want forced birth. You literally want to force women to give birth against their will.
So can I just interject here?
You're saying they should use the tools to rip apart the body and pull that out. Whereas I'm saying they should just take the baby out.
No, I'm saying she should have the right to decide what happens to her body. That's it.
Okay, but either way, the child is coming out. You're making this argument about forced birth. Either way, what is in her body is going to be outside of it. The question is it okay to shove forceps into the skull of the small person who's inside of her and then tear them apart limb by limb to get them out? Or should we say, no, that's not an acceptable way of delivering a baby. You shouldn't kill that unborn child. How is that for either way it comes out of her body? Either way the child comes out of her body. It's not as if there's one scenario where the pregnancy magically disappears and doesn't leave the body.
Let me add, forced birth is a nonsense politics statement.
But in your scenario, she's being forced to give birth against her will. Like she's
decide. Already pregnant, dude.
I know, but
we're not talking about forcing her to do anything. She's pregnant.
But then endorse that position.
I did.
Stick by it.
I reject there's no such thing as forced birth. They're saying you can't kill that baby.
Let me tell you how fascinating this is.
Because she has the baby inside her.
So fervent about legalizing the killing of a baby at 9 months that I can sit here and say, I think women should be able to terminate their pregnancy whenever they want. But if the baby is viable, there's no reason to kill it.
She has to be forced to give it then. She has to be forced to give birth and then give the baby up, is what you're saying.
Give birth. Define.
Yes. Okay. So that is forced birth, right? So she can't decide to terminate it at 8 or 9 months.
Define give birth.
You just said at 8 months if the baby is viable.
I didn't say 8 months. Define give birth. I'm trying to understand what you're saying by forced birth. What does birth mean?
You just said when she is at 8 or 9 months. Okay, so she's at 8 or 9.
I said viable.
Okay, so it's viable. The baby's viable. She should have to give birth to it in some capacity. C-section, whatever.
Define birth, and I can answer your question.
Birth, the removal of a child into the world from a mother's womb.
So how do they do that?
The woman pushes the baby out.
So then what would you call an abortion at 8 months? Is the woman pushing the baby out?
No, it's most likely a medical procedure done by a doctor.
And what is that medical procedure?
An abortion.
But what is that?
What is an abortion?
Yes, what?
How is it done?
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure how it's done at 8 months. I know earlier on it's usually done with a series of tools. I don't know how it's done at 8 or 9 months.
Okay, so your moral argument is forced birth. I'm trying to understand what your position is. If you don't know how an abortion is done, then are you in favor of forced birth?
Am I in favor of forced? No, I'm against forced birth.
But you think that women should have to expel the baby, right?
It's completely fine for me not to know the medical procedure of how abortion is done to stand up for the rights of a woman's body. I don't need to know how people perform abortions directly. I'm not going to lie here. I'm not going to pretend.
Removing a baby from a woman's body is birth.
Oh, so you're saying it doesn't count?
No.
It's birth of a different nature.
I don't think you have a definition, and I'm trying to understand what you mean by forced birth. But if you can't define the removal of the baby in a different way, I don't know what you're saying.
Birth, Tim, like the birth of a child.
So is a C-section a birth?
Sure. Yes, it is a form of extracting a living child that is viable to live in the real world.
That's how you define birth: extracting a living child to live in the real world.
No, I would define birth as someone giving birth. They're pushing a baby out of their body.
So I don't think women should be forced to do that, right?
You don't think women should be forced to push babies out of their body?
But the baby is in their body, so it's got to come out somehow.
So you're going to take it out with a C-section?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
But I'm trying to figure out what you mean by this.
So that would be forced birth. So she's forced to give and make a viable child, live in the real world.
I mean, so when you're pregnant, the baby's going to come out of you at some point.
That's the
Either
point.
we rip
no
it
matter
apart
what
or
happens,
you give birth
the baby
naturally.
is coming out of the woman, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's no being in favor of that or not. It happens. Period.
Yes.
Okay. So what's your point?
What's my point?
Am I in favor of a natural process by which a woman has to have a baby removed from her no matter what anyone says or does?
Your point is that at 8 or 9 months, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Tim.
You are wrong. Yes, I'll stop you right there because when you keep saying 8 or 9 months, that's not what I said over and over and over again.
Viability is after 6 months.
Viability is
that means that there's more than a 50% chance.
You're also wrong. It's not 6 months.
So as soon as the baby is viable, Tim, as soon as the baby is viable, then it's okay for the woman, even if she doesn't want to have it anymore for whatever reason, she should have to be forced to have it extracted from her. And then live. Is that correct? Is that your position?
Well, it's not forcing the woman to have a baby live if the baby's already alive. You see what I'm saying? Like,
here's semantics.
I got a compromise for you. I got a compromise for you. We'll tell the mother we killed it, but we'll sneak it off and give it to someone else. Does that work for you?
No, because I still think she should have autonomy. She should have the right to do it if she wants to. Of course.
She should kill the baby after it's already born?
I don't want her to kill a baby. I want her to have.
Why do you keep saying it?
Because I want her to have the ability to choose. That's different, and that is a fundamental part of this.
The baby's out of her body, right?
Forcibly. In your scenario.
No. Let's say 24 weeks. The woman goes to the doctor and says, "I want this baby out of me." And
what if she says, "I don't want to have this baby"?
I don't want to have this baby. Okay. And the doctor says, "I will remove it."
Okay.
The baby's alive. What do we do?
So you forced her to give birth?
No. She said, "Doctor, I'd like an abortion." He says, "You got it." Step right up.
He's lying to her.
No. He does the abortion and it fails. And
an abortion is terminating a pregnancy. So there's no such thing as a trick abortion. You can't trick.
They're called failed abortions.
Failed abortions, where doctors trick women into taking the babies.
No. So when they perform the abortion, as Seamus explained, they stick metal tools into the brain, scramble it up, and rip its body parts apart, and then pull it out chunk by chunk.
Okay.
When the babies are smaller, sometimes they pull them out, but the babies don't die; they survive. Right. So my question is, in the instance of a failed abortion, what should be done?
A failed abortion being that the child is living; it's outside of the mother.
Yeah.
At that point, you cannot kill that child. That would be murder.
Oh, okay.
Agreed on that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So then where does the mother's choice come in to kill?
Before that procedure takes place.
So
she has a choice to choose what she wants to have done with her body. If she goes to a doctor and the doctor's like, "I'm going to perform an abortion," which the assumption would be that I'm about to terminate the child, but then he just secretly sneaks the child out of there, that's not performing an abortion. You're just being deceptive.
Yeah, and the doctor should go to prison if they did something like that, in my opinion.
I think you go to prison if you should go to prison if he performs an abortion.
Snap.
Yeah.
I heard that. Not
Opposite
surprised.
perspective.
So there's also something that none of us know, because I don't think any of us are medical doctors. The difference on the physiology of the female body giving a 9-month abortion, having that happen, or the actual birthing process, whether by C-section or natural birth, it might have vastly different consequences on the female body. So that's something to take into account.
So wait. Remember the Born Alive Act?
Yes.
That was a Republican position, wasn't it? What was that?
So there have been a couple of different Born Alive Acts in different years. But what they basically say is that if the abortion fails, it is not legal to kill the child.
Wasn't that Republicans were trying to pass a law?
Republicans were trying to pass that. That was one of the only things Obama voted on in the Senate. He voted against it.
Obama voted against it. But you would be in favor of that.
In favor of what?
The Born Alive Act.
I'm not completely familiar with it, so I don't have to read
if an infant is born alive after an attempted abortion, it has the same protection of law and degree as a newborn.
Yeah, I would be okay with that, because at that point it's a human. If you're killing a person that is alive outside of a womb, then that's murder, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Can I ask you, this is not a gotcha.
We agree on that. That's great.
I want to ask in good faith. So,
yeah, of course.
You believe that the moment after the child is outside of the birth canal, that they are now endowed with human rights.
Yes.
However, when they are inside of the mother, literally anything you do to them is acceptable because they're inside of the mother.
Oh, no, I don't think anything is acceptable, but I think the mother should still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child inside of her body.
Hold on.
Not
what
her.
about meth?
Should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
I think if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like, I don't know what the name of the service is in the United States.
Child services?
I guess DCFS would be.
Oh, it's her body, though.
Yeah, it's her body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the big deal?
The big deal is that she's intentionally trying to kill a child.
Hold on there a minute.
Yeah, and I see where we're going.
I don't understand what you're saying. It's her body.
It's her body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the problem?
Well, first off, doing meth is illegal, period. Doesn't matter if you're doing it with a child or without a child.
Not in Oregon.
Methyl and MDMA. It's a
Maybe
type
it's
of meth.
alcohol.
Wait,
then.
sorry, what?
Not crystal meth.
Crystal meth is legal in Oregon?
No, not crystal.
Hold on a second.
MDMA is a kind of meth. Methylendaxy, methamphetamine is ecstasy. That's a kind of meth. There's also crystal meth, which is not legal. MDMA is legal in some places for therapy sessions. I don't know if it's legal for very pregnant women.
Okay, it is.
Is it for pregnant women?
Oregon decriminalized possession in 2021.
You were right.
But I don't know if
But
that's...
okay, dude. So like...
decriminalizing possession is different than legalizing crystal meth. You know those two things are completely different, right?
It's a question of whether you can press charges.
Hold on.
Yeah.
What?
So when you decriminalize a small amount of drugs, that means if you're caught with that drugs by a cop, that means if you're arrested, you cannot be charged for 1 gram, 2 grams, whatever that is.
That's what legalizing is.
No, this is decriminalization, not legalization. We never said legalization.
Legalization is a semantic term. It doesn't mean anything.
Yes, it means that there's no longer a prohibition on that product.
Okay, so if a woman does meth, she's legally allowed to have it, right?
Is she legally allowed to do it or possess it?
I mean, what's the difference?
Well, two very different things. You can be legally allowed to possess drugs and not be legally allowed to take drugs, for example.
Alcohol.
So if she does alcohol.
Can a woman chug a fifth of vodka while pregnant?
Yeah, she can legally.
But do you think she has a right to do so?
I think she has a right to do. Yes, she has a right to do it. I don't agree with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And heroin?
It's illegal.
I don't think heroin's illegal. I think heroin actually was legalized. I think it's controlled, but I think that one specifically was oxycodone and other drugs. So
she has a right to do it. Whether or not I agree with her doing it, that's completely different. I don't agree with a woman who would have an elective abortion at 9 months. I think that is like, why the fuck would you have done that? But I think she has the right to do it, right?
But do you think it's ethical that she like?
Oh, I don't think it's ethical. No, of course not.
Because some things are made legal that are unethical, in my opinion. True. And should those be made illegal?
I mean, that's a very broad question, right?
No. I'm sorry. Personal use of methamphetamine is allowed. It's a civil citation, like a traffic ticket, not a criminal citation. So allowed maybe is hyperbolic. It is a civil citation to be caught using methamphetamine in Oregon. You get a ticket for it, but no crime.
So I just looked up the Born Alive Act, by the way. It says this bill is deliberately misleading and offensive to pregnant people and doctors and nurses who provide their care. It is another attempt by anti-abortion politicians to spread misinformation as a means to get a warped political end, to ban safe and legal abortion. It's an entry point to try and make abortion illegal.
Where did you read this?
Okay, well, no, hold on. No. I don't care. I mean, who cares about the Born Alive Act? The question was, if an abortion happens but the baby survives, can you kill it? And Lance already said no. So we're done with that.
So he would, yeah, for sure.
So any other political arguments, anyone left, right, or otherwise trying to change that? No, it's irrelevant. Once the baby's born, it's a baby. So
it has the same rights as every other human at that point, right? It's an American.
This is an interesting. I think this falls in line with the idea of anarcho-tyranny that we were talking about. My view of the modern left is that their positions are nothing but chaos. There's no logical pathway towards preserving life, improving people's lives. It seems to be only. It's like yin yang. Right? There's one side that's talking about long-term planning, logical thinking, and improving the world, and one side that takes the inverse position no matter what. For instance, 25 people push in front of a subway, nobody bats an eye. 3 guys try to subdue a man, and now they want prison. That's like a weird inversion of what the law is supposed to do. The law should stop the people who are pushing people on the trains and protect the people on the train who are being victimized. But the left's position is the inverse of it, right?
Are you asking me for like an affirmation of that? Because if you ask me...
No, I'm just saying like that's my view.
So when you say the left's idea are all chaos, I mean, if you really wanted to boil down what the left is fighting for, especially myself, it's expanding freedom. I believe in freedom. I love freedom. I'm sure everyone here likes freedom too, right? You're all about freedom.
How do you define freedom exactly?
So for me, I believe in a democratic process where we don't have tyrants, we don't have dictators, we don't have kings or queens. We have the ability as a democracy to be able to vote for who we work for, or sorry, who our leaders are, right? Like we want to be able to vote for our president, our prime minister. I believe in that fundamentally. But my other thing is I want to expand that freedom into the workplace because we spend about 8 hours a day every single day in our works, our jobs. I want to expand freedom there. So people who work at their jobs for 8 hours a day have the ability to vote for things in their lives, better healthcare, better working conditions, whether or not their boss is corrupt and stealing from all of them. I want to expand that. I want to expand freedom into other parts of life. That's a fundamental belief for me.
So what do you mean by stealing from them?
Stealing wages, for example.
I want to be sure that I know you're talking about that study.
I'm curious as to why you think it's increasing so much.
What's that signify?
The history of left-handedness.
This is the history of left-handedness in the United States. Mm-hmm. Do you see what happens here?
It levels out. It goes up and levels out.
We used to treat people who were left-handed as satanic, as the devil, all that kind of shit. You remember that, right? And that's why there was a lot of people who didn't record themselves as being left-handed. And then boom, when we stopped doing that after the 1880s and in the 1900s, it spiked. Now this spike isn't because there was a whole bunch of indoctrination or Alex Jones was like, oh, left-handed ideology, everyone has become left-handed. This has nothing to do with that. This is naturally how many left-handed people there were. And then it plateaued. We are in a situation right now where it is safer than ever for people to come out and if they're queer, bisexual, whatever it is. And because of that, they feel safer expressing that. That's why Gen Z of all
I was concerned there was a transgenocide.
Yeah. So here's
this is this is the actual statistics on people increasing. You can see the red one. That is Gen Z. That is the amount of people who in Gen Z, it's skyrocketing. It looks like they're identifying more than ever because their generation feels more comfortable talking about this kind of stuff.
So you don't think that there's like a transgenocide or anything like that?
I don't think that there's a trans indoctrination that is coming through media.
Genocide, I said it.
Yes, and I'm saying that I don't think there's a trans indoctrination coming through media that is programming kids to become trans. I think that's ridiculous. So, and if you want to change topics to talk about transgenocide, we can move on to that. But you asked me specifically why is there a spike? Yeah. That is why.
Okay, so my follow-up is you think trans people feel safer than ever?
No. Right now there's over 400 different bills being pushed in the United States that is directly targeting trans people.
So they don't feel safe?
Of course they don't.
So then why are they coming out if they don't feel safe?
They have more access because that Generation Z, has a lot more acceptance towards trans people than older people who pass laws, draconian people who pass laws. The boomers are the ones running the show right now. They're still the ones in government. They're still the ones passing laws. There's very few Generation Z in government or parliament.
You want to know what I think? I think there is a transgenocide.
Okay.
And I think it's you.
Okay.
Because you're sterilizing a lot of these people.
How so?
I mean, they're literally sterilizing them. The surgery to remove the gonads, hysterectomies, and puberty and cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers have a high rate of sterilization. I mean, first of all, removal of the gonads in the uterus is an absolute sterilization, and then puberty blockers have a very high rate, and cross-sex hormones have an extremely high rate of sterilizing the individual. So these people can no longer reproduce. That's genocide.
Is this the joke you're going to go for?
Joke? You are removing these people's ability to reproduce. And if they're at a young age and they haven't had the ability, like for instance, Jazz Jennings can never have kids. Jazz Jennings also, and this is probably part of your studies, can't actually feel any sexual feeling of any kind.
Do you have any idea how weird this sounds right now? Like, why are you obsessing with a stranger's genital pleasure? That's so weird. That's so bizarre.
That was very weird yourself.
You guys are all weird.
No.
So I'm talking about adults who engage in activities, which is a large portion of the global economy, whether you like it or not. Sure. Sex sells, they say. And when I say this person will never have this ability, you go, how weird is that?
It's weird for you to fixate on a stranger's genital pleasure. That's strange. That's so bizarre.
Well, she's public about it.
But see, you're not making an argument right now, is my point.
I'm not. I'm saying it's weird. It's not an argument. Yeah, that's an observation.
So you're trying to make an appeal to emotion and an appeal to shame.
No, I'm just giving you my genuine thought when you say something like that. Like,
well, it was a really fucking pathetic attempt at trying to make an argument.
Why should we talk about that? Why should we discuss whether or not she has genital feeling? That's not important. It's not. It's not in my business.
So let's focus then on the sterilizing of the individual. Are you okay with that?
Who's sterilizing people?
Jazz Jennings is sterile.
Why are we going back to Jazz Jennings? I
don't
know anything about her.
Because Jazz is a famous individual on cable television.
So if she is sterile for whatever reason, what does that have to do with me? Why does that concern me? Why should I pass legislation?
The sterilization of teenagers.
This is such a weird way to frame this. Like,
you are removing teenagers' ability to have children.
I'm not doing anything. I'm not a doctor, Tim.
I
don't have the ability to do this.
Right?
I support people having access to health care. Of course. Why would I want to prevent that just because some people have bigotry towards them?
Let's try again. You seem scared of this. Do you believe that parents and doctors should have the ability to remove the ability of a child for future reproduction?
They should have the ability to give them access to health care. Of course they should.
So why do you keep saying
you're implying that every single gender-affirming care results in sterilization? That is not true at all.
I said the removal
There's also people who are trans that never get bottom surgery.
You seem very scared of this. It's scaring you.
How am I afraid to?
Because you keep deflecting when I ask you. So Jazz Jennings is a specific example. Let's try this. Let's slow down and go one point at a time.
You think I'm deflecting because I don't want to keep talking about someone's genital pleasure who's a stranger? I'm saying it shouldn't concern you. It shouldn't concern anyone, Tim.
Your appeal to emotion is not going to work on me. I'm asking you a science-based...
I know I can appeal to your emotion.
I'm trying a logic-based question about the future of these people. I believe you are genociding them. I believe you intend on genociding autistic individuals. I genuinely believe that.
Who's autistic in this?
A large portion of trans kids are autistic, namely females. So this is an issue in that young, lesbian, autistic females are a large portion of those who are transgender.
Do you have data on this?
I mean, come on, bro. Do you have data on what you've brought up? You couldn't give me one study, but yes,
I've given you not only studies, meta studies. I've given you multiple meta studies on this. I've given you a surplus of information on this topic.
Make up six times more likely to have autism, according to NPR.org. So I think you're trying to genocide autistic people. I literally...
Six times more. What's the percentage of? That's what I asked you.
6 times, 60%?
That's not how that works. That's not... You don't...
600, sorry.
No, that's not how that works.
You're saying what percent of them
What percentage
are
of trans people happen to be autistic lesbians? That was your claim, that a large portion are. I'm saying I don't know any statistics on that. I've never heard that before.
So the first thing I pulled up was that transgender and non-binary people are up to 6 times more likely to have autism, right?
Right, but that's not answering the question yet.
And your question is what portion of... let me Google it again. Because I thought that was sufficient and you know... 24%.
So that's not the majority, even if that stat is true.
6 times more common. 24%.
That's still not the majority, even if that statistic was true.
Yeah, no, but the majority is...
So 24% of trans people are autistic according to that data, and 6% of...
So what I think is, I think that there are people who hate people with Down syndrome, and in Iceland, they've actually publicly avowed or praised their eradication of people with Down syndrome. I think that's horrifying. Like, you can be okay with it. I'm not saying you're not allowed to believe that, right? You don't have to have the same morals as me. I just think it's wrong to genocide like people with Down syndrome. You know what I mean?
You have completely derailed this conversation. You're assuming that I'm pro people having abortions for people who have Down syndrome. When we're talking about,
I'm not saying you do. I'm saying in Iceland, they've
what
stated
does this have to do with trans rights?
Right. So we see a higher rate of autistic people, autism in trans kids.
You said it makes it the majority. It does not, even based on the source you pulled up. Okay.
24%.
Okay.
I still believe that this is very much an effort. I think the left is intent on genociding trans people.
In what way?
Removing their ability to reproduce.
How are they removing their ability to reproduce?
By cutting off their testicles and removing their
uteruses. That is
uteruses.
not the only operation that is done. There are trans people who maintain their same genitals as before. Right. Not everyone has to decide to get bottom surgery. That's a choice they should make.
And cross-sex hormones do have a high rate of causing sterilization.
It can, but it doesn't always. And you can be trans and not get any operations at all.
So I think you are... So like, I'm in favor of making sure these people can always have families and have kids, right? Your position, whether you support the moral issue or not, results in many of them being sterile. For instance, the reason I use Jazz Jennings as an example, because this is a person on television with millions of followers who wrote a book and told kids about this journey. The journey that Jazz Jennings went on resulted in a complete inability to have a family and have children. I think that's terrifying because Jazz was not old enough to understand the implications of that. Jazz will never have a family. Jazz, the genetics of Jazz Jennings is over. That is one of the most horrifying things to me as a human being, because I think genocide is wrong, right?
Why should her ability to be or have reproductive function, why should that concern you?
For the same reason the Uyghur Muslims in China concern me, like human rights issues. China, for instance,
But what if she never wants to have kids?
That's something you determine for yourself later in life.
Exactly. So why is it our business?
Because it's been removed before Jazz could have the ability to make the conclusion.
That has nothing to do with us. She could decide to never want to have kids, and that's fine and valid.
Right. So my morals would be that a society protects the children because there are certain things you can't know until you're at least 24 or older when your brain is fully developed, which is why we don't allow people to drink and do certain drugs, whatever drugs are legal, until they're 21. So for me, I'm like, if you can't drink till you're 21, if there's like you can't smoke till you're 18, this society absolutely recognizes you can't drive till a certain age. That the reason that the driving age is what it is. One of the arguments made, I think it was in Illinois, is that risk taking is a lot higher in youth than it is in older people. So the argument is once you're past 16, you go through driver's ed. That helps control for the higher risk taking of younger people. So we set an age limit. For someone who's 10 years old to be put on Lupron and then cross-sex hormones, they will never develop the ability to reproduce. So in the instance of Jazz, again, a famous individual who's very influential with millions of followers, there was never the ability to reproduce developed, which caused complications. Complications aside, that's Jazz's personal business. But the puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones did sterilize Jazz, 100% sterilization. Jazz was not old enough to understand the implications of that. So I have concerns about having children, whether they choose to or their parents choose to. I think that's genocide.
I can kind of see your argument because if a kid was a straight kid, just a kid, and they were like a 12-year-old girl, and she was like, I don't want to have babies when I'm older. And the mom was like, okay, then we'll sterilize you right now. And they went and had the kid had a hysterectomy. I think that's illegal. I don't know, but I would imagine society needs to protect little kids from crazy parents that are like, just because a 12-year-old says they don't have babies later in life. So the fact that it is sterilizing as a byproduct, I think should be taken into account with the whole procedure.
I think that's still something that comes down to the individual and what they choose to do. And if someone is like, I want to have gender affirming care, knowing the risks, then why is that my business? It's the same thing with someone who wants to have a surgery that can have other complications. That's not my business. If someone had an appendix inflamed and they had to have their appendix out, there are potential complications that come from that, but I'm not going to prevent them from having healthcare and saying that you can't have a right to get your appendix out, because every major medical association in the United States agrees that that is the best way to treat appendicitis. And in this case, when we're talking about trans people, every single medical association in the United States agrees on gender affirming care.
Then you know what they should do?
Every single one.
You know what they should do? They should produce one single randomized controlled trial for puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to show that it's safe and effective. But they have not. So it's not healthcare, it's experimentation. You talk about giving kids healthcare. That's not healthcare. Healthcare repairs something which is broken. You use the example of somebody's appendix not functioning properly.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, yes. So what you have to do in that instance is intervene so that the body can function as it is intended to. Destroying somebody's ability to procreate is demolishing the organ that you're claiming to treat, right? You're destroying the biological function rather than helping to improve it. That's not healthcare.
I'll read this one. This is important. 1776's Life says, what is a woman?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah.
A woman is an adult human female.
Easy enough?
I agree with that.
So trans women are not women?
Oh,
Also,
absolutely.
I would answer that.
They're
What is a
adult
woman?
human females.
A woman is hot.
Trans women aren't female, they're male.
No, they're female.
So they have female gametes and whatnot?
Oh, this is actually very interesting. Do you want to talk about gametes? So in embryonic development, when you have two gametes, obviously the sperm and the egg, they combine, right? Usually it's the 23rd chromosome, the XX or the XY, that is going to determine whether or not someone becomes a male or a female. But that's not always the case. There are exceptions to this, known as people with differences of sexual development, DSDs, or intersex people.
It's like
there can be other combinations.
0.017 or something?
It's on a conservative estimate, 0.6% to 2% of the population. There is more intersex people in America than there are redheads. So there's a lot of intersex people. And
that's if you go with the 2%.
That's if you go with the 2%. Seamus is completely right, but I do want to add one really interesting thing about this.
How does that mean a female is a male?
So here's the neatest part. There are individuals who have XY chromosomes, which is normally what is going to be a male, right? You develop it's not the only factor, by the way. It's a push and pull with hormones and other stuff like that. But there are people who have XY chromosomes. So if you looked at their bones years into the future and you analyze them, they would be genetically male, but they have a specific condition that suppresses testosterone, which makes them develop 100% like women. We are all templates. We are all templates, and based on hormones, the expression of gender and different factors, we turn in one direction or the other towards more male or
Did you know
more
that
female.
Certain drugs don't affect men and women the same way?
Exactly. And that's the interesting thing. But we can hijack this entire process. If we take hormones, so if we take testosterone or estrogen, we suddenly can have traits that are more feminine or masculine, the redistribution of fat, the growth of breasts, the length of hair, all that kind of stuff. So
the socialist wants to redistribute the fat.
So here's what I'm getting to is I think it was in 1993 they passed a law in the United States that required clinical testing to be done on men and women separately because women are affected by drugs differently. Yep. Mm-hmm. And they found that painkillers, for instance, didn't work on women. And so these male doctors were all like, these women are sissies, they can't take the pain. When in reality, it's like the painkillers weren't working.
Yeah, they were being
and they also, in these studies, found that, the differences between males and females, you can't change through hormones. For instance, fast twitch muscle fiber, collagen in the skin, prenatal testosterone, the impact, that won't change from later in life taking hormones. Mm-hmm. So a male's not a female, female's not a male. Sex is bimodal. I think if you ask...
It's genuinely not. Any
it's
scientist...
not bimodal?
Totally is.
We've gone from the left saying that sex is bimodal to not rejecting it, or are you just incorrect?
I think I'm incorrect. Hold on.
Do you know what bimodal means?
I don't know.
It means that intersex people exist and that there's an overlap between the two bell curves.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you're totally right. This is I'll take a big L right there. Sorry.
That means that 97% of females will have statistically average female traits.
Yes, you're correct. The reason I wanted to jump on that, though, is because you're saying that just because you have XY chromosomes, that means by definition you're male. That's not true.
I didn't say that.
Okay. Yeah. Do you know about the South African beauty queen, where she is by all there's a documentary on her. By all accounts, if you saw her, you'd be like, this is just a gorgeous, beautiful woman. She has all the parts of a woman. She has breasts. She has a vagina, all that stuff. But she is intersex, and her chromosomes are XY. So if you looked at her genetics, she's genetically male.
This isn't.
But accepting that we want rights for all people, including intersex people, doesn't change the fact that they make up a relatively small portion of society.
0.6 to 2%.
So can I make a point here?
So a biological male cannot become a biological female.
No one is saying they can. No.
You just did.
No, I didn't. Not whatsoever.
I asked you what a woman was.
Yes, an adult human female.
And I said, is a trans woman a female? You said yes.
I said a trans woman is a woman, and they absolutely are. This is not a gotcha.
But a woman is a female.
Cis women and trans women are different, and trans women do not say that they're cis women. They don't, and that's what makes them trans.
They say they're women.
Yeah, of course, because black women and white women are different, but they're both women.
But trans women and
a cis woman are different, but
you
they're
said a
both
woman is female.
Women. An adult human female.
A trans woman is male. That's what makes them trans.
They are not male.
So I just want to make a point.
But a woman is female.
They are assigned.
Assigned.
You're assigned your gender at birth. So we're only
gender
one.
is observed.
We're two, right? We're two super chats in.
I feel like a trans woman is a man and a trans man is a woman, and they're both. You're both a trans woman and a man together.
They don't
never
see it that
stop
way.
becoming one. You always are both.
They don't see it that way.
I think the point about like intersex or some people having chromosomes that don't exactly match up with their sex is not the problem is not a problem for what is termed the gender binary by the left. Mm-hmm. So I think the best way to define sex is based on gametes, the role a person plays in reproduction. And Tim mentioned gametes and not chromosomes. So I would define a female as someone whose reproductive anatomy is ordered towards gestation. And then a male is someone whose reproductive anatomy is ordered towards insemination. The operating phrase there is ordered towards, right? Because someone can have an issue with their reproductive anatomy, but it's still ordered towards something.
And recognizing the bimodal nature of human sex. Meaning that overwhelmingly there's two big trees with a slight overlap in the middle.
Well, even that overlap in the middle, the vast majority of people who are intersex are basically clearly a member of one sex, but with some feature that appears differently. But with one or two features that appear a bit differently.
That's a huge problem. That's a massive problem.
But then, people who you genuinely can't tell are extremely rare.
I don't like the argument that we should reform society around, very, very small minorities, other than just protect the rights of. So if we're talking about, the issue of biological males going into women's bathrooms or something like that, you have an issue of the civil rights of females versus the civil rights of trans women, and that's where the conflict comes into play.
Yeah, but the conflict there is pretty easy. The majority of people who abuse women in bathrooms is cis men. Let's go after cis men for that.
Well, I think the solution is easy, just single stall bathrooms. Like,
I don't know.
Also, can I ask?
The bathrooms here aren't gendered by. I want to say everyone at home, if you didn't know that, they don't gender the bathrooms here. There's no signs.
Single rooms.
Yeah,
that's just.
That's the way the world should be.
My position has always been single.
You don't have a right to be comfortable. That's not one of your rights. You could deal with it. Life is weird and uncomfortable sometimes.
But the bigger question is, in general, when it comes to the transgender men in sports and women in sports and things like that, is the rights of females versus the rights of trans people, and who gets supplanted.
Right. And so my answer to the bathroom problem would be the majority of women who are abused in bathrooms are abused by cis men. And so that we should be, if we want to protect women and go after abusers, go after cis men who attack women in bathrooms.
But how do you tell the difference between a cis man and a trans woman?
I have to add one more part to that. Trans women are more often the victims of sexual and physical abuse than they are the perpetrators.
But that didn't actually address what I said, right? It's like females and trans women, who gets supplanted? If females say we want a space free from males, period, then should they have their rights protected in having a safe space, or should trans women say, no, we actually get access to this space?
Do trans men take away from your experience? Do they supplant you as a man?
Me personally, I don't care. Right?
Me too. In fact, trans men make my experience way more interesting.
But you haven't answered the question.
Because you're saying supplanting their experience, right? You're taking away from women.
There are women right now,
yes,
who are saying, they're biological females saying, we do not want biological males in our space.
Mm-hmm. So should Blair White be allowed to go in that bathroom?
I think Blair White should go in the bathroom where Blair White appears to fit in most.
So why does she get a pass? Because she's very passing? Is that why?
I'm not talking about, my view is Buck Angel should go in the men's room and Blair White should go in the women's room.
But they disagree with that. She's technically a biological male.
I think Blair White agrees with what I just said.
Yes, but you're taking my position. And good for you. That's woke as fuck. Hell yeah. That's based. We made progress.
That's why, I don't know if you watch the show. It's not progress. I've always had that opinion.
It's based as fuck. Hell yeah.
But I've always had that opinion. So even Cassandra Fairbanks.
So trans women can go into women's bathrooms. Awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
I don't know.
We agree.
So my issue is,
hell yeah.
Seamus doesn't agree with that.
Yeah.
And Buck Angel's biologically female, but
you think Blair White should have to go into a man's bathroom?
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I think that just causes more problems.
Because well, I don't want to say anything that's going to get Tim's YouTube channel taken down.
Smash, smash, smash!